Thank you, Jitendra, and welcome everyone. The Whispers reading for this particular Sunday was self-evident. It was right at the start of Whispers from Eternity, and it's called We Demand of Thee as Thy Children. How many are surprised? So, and here's what Yogananda says: Thou art our Father. We are made in Thine image. We are Thy children. We neither ask nor pray as beggars, but demand of Thee, as Thy children, the gifts of wisdom, salvation, health, happiness, and eternal joy. Whether naughty or good, we are still Your children, all of us. Help us to perceive and understand inwardly Thy will for us. Teach us the independent use of our human will, since You have given it to us to use freely, attuned to Thy wisdom-guided will. So this time, I remember as you do Sunday services for a while, these topics start repeating. And then you have to find a new avenue or approach to use the same readings. And, generally speaking, when the title is We Are Children of the Light, the import or the direction of our flow of thought is on us as children. But today I want to change the script. And I want to talk about parental obligations. Because if we are children of the light, it means light is our parent. And parents have obligations. They're supposed to take care of their children, be there for them, support, nurture, train, discipline, and make sure the child is successful. And if we are truly children of the light, and light is our parent, the question arises, does that light, because when you talk about light, it's very impersonal. It's something you see, you feel, you expand with, and the personal aspect of that light is not necessarily evident. So the question arises, does light do all those things for us that a parent is supposed to do? And if not, we can take it to task, because it's our parent. So we will see, I hope, that light does do many of these things for us, and even more so. And a part of my sharing is based on this excerpt from, in the Festival of Light, Swamiji says this impersonally. But the way I want to share, hopefully with a few stories, makes it realize for all of us how intimate and deep and love-filled that relationship with our Father, Mother, God, that divine light is. In the festival, which we'll do later, of course, Swamiji has the words. When one of the ministers holds up the taper, gaze upon this light as a symbol of God's love. A prayer of love went up from earth and you responded. A ray of your light flashed out from the heart of infinity, burst downward through night skies of consciousness, and was born on earth for the redemption of mankind in human form. Many times has that light descended, drawn to earth by the call of aspiring love. Now, we read this sentence or this set of sentences every Sunday, but what does that mean to us? And I'm going to get here, I suspect there'll be a photo that'll come up here, and I'll tell you why we have that photo. Because I'm going to tell you a story from India. Fun story, short story. Murli does it far better than me, and it's not a scriptural story. And if you see this is from 2019. Badri is, during Spiritual Renewal Week, the father, Badri, who lived here at the village, now is in Ananda, Portland, was reading some of the Indian tales. The book that he has in his hand is called Tales of Vishnu, one of the Indian gods. And next to him are his two kids, Jay and Tulsi and Annabelle and Bodhi and one more child there. And I took this photo just because, he's reached a particular part of the story, which I'll tell you about, which is poignant. And you can see Tulsi's expression. She's wondering what will happen next. So the story is this, and there's a story behind the story. Now, India, as you know, for many centuries was ruled by the British, 2.5 centuries. But before that, it was ruled by invaders from Afghanistan who moved to India and made their home in India. And of course, that's why a lot of Indian cuisine is so varied, because people from all these different parts of the country came, made it home, enriched it. But some of the leaders of that Muslim kingdom were benevolent. You know, they wanted to be just and fair to subjects who had all religions. Others were more fanatical. Okay, and when, like, Swamiji often mentions Aurangzeb, who wanted to convert everybody to Islam. But the story is not about Aurangzeb. It's about this great emperor known as Akbar. You know, he's one of the most well-known of the Mughal or the Muslim rulers in India. And he wanted to be universal in his approach. In his court, he had great people, best of the best from all traditions. Tansen, whom Master mentions in Autobiography of a Yogi, a master of music. He could intone the raga for rain, and it would suddenly start raining. He would intone the raga for night, and suddenly the castle would go dark. He had many such great courtiers in his court. One of them was his best friend, Birbal, who was a Hindu. And he was known to be very quick-witted. And there's many stories, Akbar and Birbal stories, that you grow up with in India if you grow up there. I suspect like 99% of them didn't happen. But they are wonderful stories that delight you, his quick wit, you know, the apocryphal. Now, this is one of those stories. The story goes like this. Akbar says to Birbal, you know, I want to expand my understanding because I also want to feel I'm not just a Muslim, I'm also a Hindu, and I want to tune into all religions and gain respect for them. So what I'm going to do is I've asked this well-known person who knows stories from the Hindu religion to come every day and read some of those stories to me and my son. So I grow and he grows, he learns, he's the crown prince, he'll be the king one day. And so I'm going to start this experiment. And then every day he would come talk to Birbal, and he was getting a little agitated. You know, Hinduism is crazier than I thought. There's gods, demigods, gods with hands. The Divine Mother has a severed head. She sits on a lion. She has a sword. She also blesses. And then there's the king of the heaven. There's the king of the netherworld. They both get blessed by gods when they do penance. I mean, in Christian tradition, no demon's been blessed by God, if you think about it. But that's the bread and butter of the Hindu stories, that the demons pray to a Shiva or a Vishnu and gain power, and then they start fighting, and then Shiva or Vishnu have to give another boon to the gods, which will make them win, so on and so forth. So he, you know, his brain was starting to hum. And he's saying, I just can't take it. My son loves these stories. He just opens his heart, and they're so colorful, he loves them. And then one day he said, you know, this story will be make or break for me, because this is a crazy story about Vishnu's most devoted disciple. And it's an elephant. You know, so if you go back to that photo there, you will see when the booklet that Badri is reading, it's that same illustrated story. 5 years ago, on that cover, you'll see there's an elephant. Right next to him, Vishnu is flying to help him. And his leg is caught by a crocodile. And so he tells, but Akbar says, you know, tomorrow he's going to tell us the climax of this story. There's this devotee elephant who's very devoted to Vishnu, loves Vishnu, is always worshipping him. He goes to the river and he takes a bath like a Brahmin does, you know, and does the pujas to Vishnu. And so Birbal says, okay, let me know how the story goes. And the next day, Akbar comes and says, I'm done with Hinduism. No more. It's incredulous beyond imagination of expectancy. You know, I just can't take it. So Birbal says, what happened? Well, here's what happens. This devotee elephant is in the river, and he is doing his prayers to Vishnu, when a crocodile comes and grabs his leg and starts pulling him under. And the elephant shouts to Vishnu, Lord, help me. And Vishnu instantly appears and disengages the crocodile so that his devotee is free. And that is the craziest thing I ever heard in my life. Because I am a king myself. If some subject asked for my intercession, I wouldn't drop everything I'm doing. I'm running an entire kingdom. I would send somebody like a general or a warrior or whoever is needed. It just doesn't make sense. Vishnu is the preserver. He sustains the entire universe. Big job. He has all the astral beings at his command. I just can't make sense. This is way too crazy that he'll drop everything and come running himself to disengage a puny crocodile. Anybody could do that. Any of his warriors could do that. And Birbal tried to explain to him, well, it's not just that he's a subject. The elephant is like his son. He says, no matter what you do, whatever you want to explain to me, I just can't believe this is logical. And so Birbal knows that he can't argue when the emperor has made up his mind. So he waits. Few days later, what the emperor says is to Birbal, he says, the reservoir, the dam that I've been building, my pet project, so the subjects can have water, is almost complete. Why don't you come with me? We are going to go take a tour of the reservoir, and I'll bring my crown prince. He can see, get to know people, people get to know him, and we'll see how it's all going. And so, of course, the retinue of the emperor, his bodyguards, and other ministers, Birbal, the crown prince, they all go to this huge reservoir, and they are ready to just see what a big thing this project will be. Drought will be erased from all of the kingdom as a result of this. And as Akbar is talking, in his plain view, Birbal grasps the crown prince and throws him into the reservoir. And the prince is so shocked, all he says is, "Father." And as soon as Akbar sees what's happened with his really nice clothes, with his crown, with everything else, he jumps into the reservoir. And he saves his son, who knows how to swim, and Akbar knows how his son knows how to swim. But he just jumps in, saves his son, and then comes ready, huffing and puffing to Birbal. "Explain yourself, or your head will be separated from your body." I says, Yes, Birbal says, "I'm going to explain myself. But first, can you tell me, why did you jump into the water? You had your generals here, you had your other ministers here, you are dressed in this fine raiment, which is hard to find anywhere, your crowns, your jewels." And Akbar said, "You idiot, do you think I even thought of those things? My son shouted for my help, and I jumped." And then he realized, because he knew Birbal always had a reason for what he shared. Then he realized that what that story was trying to convey, it wasn't that, the Indian stories is not about an actual elephant and an actual crocodile. They convey relationships between us and our maker in human terms, because otherwise they stay very impersonal. And so all that story was trying to say is, when the devotee calls, the divine responds in a very personal manner. We are children of the light. Now, that is a story that is part of mythology, elephants and Vishnu, etc. How does that translate? I want to bring this story down to how it translates to real human beings. First, let's talk about how it translates to the interplay between masters. And one of the best ways to see this, the sweetness, the intimacy of the relationship between the Lord, that light, and ourselves, is in a beautiful chapter in Autobiography of a Yogi, Materializing a Palace in the Himalayas. Now, the thing is, with Autobiography of a Yogi, oftentimes a chapter is packed with so many things that the most dramatic ones are what rivet our attention. And I'd say this is a fun exercise to do. Take any autobiography of a yogi chapter and say that I'm going to not tune into the main part of this story and see what else is there. And in Materializing a Palace in the Himalayas, there's many things there, except for that materializing the palace and receiving Kriya Yoga and Kriya being shared with the world. Remember how that chapter starts. Lahiri has been transferred in his government job to the foothills of the Himalayas. He has a lot of time at hand, so he wanders nearby in Ranikhet. And suddenly he hears one day somebody calling out his name. And he follows that magnetic call and reaches this ledge, which you can go to even today if you take pilgrimages. And there is a man who looks exactly like him, but is 26 years old. And he says, "Lahiri, you have come. I waited for you for a while." And Lahiri Mahashaya says, "I just don't know you. I mean, okay, maybe you waited for me." And Lahiri, "Come rest here for a bit." And Lahiri rests for a bit and then says, "I should get back. I'll be late for work." The Babaji, who's his guru, actually says, well, the telegram was made for you, not you for the telegram. And when that's paraphrasing Jesus. And when Lahiri asks, what do you mean? He says, I suggested to your superior with a silent mental whisper that he transfer you here so that you and I could meet. And after that, Lahiri Masha is scratching his head. Here's a person who looks like me, whom I don't know, who says he sends messages to my superior so I can get transferred. And he's asking me if this place looks familiar, as if I've been here before. And so, finally he says, Lahiri, surely this cave seems familiar to you. And then Lahiri writes, as I maintained a bewildered silence, the saint approached and struck me gently on the forehead. At his magnetic touch, a wondrous current swept through my brain, releasing the sweet seed memories of my previous life. I remember. My voice was half choked with joyous sobs. You are my Guru Babaji, who has always belonged to me. Scenes of the past arise vividly in my mind. Here in this cave, I spent many years of my last incarnation. As ineffable recollections overwhelmed me, I tearfully embraced my master's feet. And now Babaji shares something with Lahiri, which to me, in a way, is the very heart of this particular chapter. Because I don't know if materialized palaces will be for me, or I'll suddenly wake up to realize I was always liberated like Lahiri Masha did. But this applies to me. And so Lahiri Masha is told this by Babaji. For more than 3 decades, because Lahiri Masha is 33 years old when this meeting happens. For more than 3 decades, I have waited for you here, waited for you to return to me. Babaji's voice rang with celestial love. You slipped away in your previous life and vanished into the tumultuous waves of life beyond death. The magic wand of your karma touched you and you were gone. Though you lost sight of me, never did I lose sight of you. I pursued you over the luminescent astral sea where the glorious angels sail. Through gloom, storm, upheaval, and light, I followed you, like a mother bird guarding her young. As you lived out your human term of womb life and emerged a babe, my eye was ever on you. When you covered your tiny form in the lotus posture under the Nadia sands in your childhood, I was invisibly present, because this was Lahiri's pastime. As a boy, he would bury himself in the sand and meditate for hours. Patiently, month after month, year after year, I have watched over you, waiting for this perfect day. Now you are with me. Lo, here is your cave, loved of yore. I have kept it ever clean and ready for you. Here is your hallowed asana blanket, where you daily sat to fill your expanding heart with God. Behold there your bowl, from which you often drank the nectar prepared by me. See how I have kept the brass cup brightly polished, that you might drink again therefrom. My own, do you now understand? My Guru, what can I say? I murmured brokenly. Where has one ever heard of such deathless love? I gazed long and ecstatically on my eternal treasure, my Guru in life and death. And so some places in the autobiography have those glimpses of that infinite love the great ones have for all of us as disciples. But then the question arises, well, that was a liberated soul talking to a liberated soul. Let's take it one notch lower. A liberated soul talking to a disciple who's not yet liberated. And this is a story from the New Path, which again I love very much. This is Swami Kriyananda was there when Yogananda met for the first time a disciple called Oliver Rogers, who later received the spiritual name Devananda. He was the one to whom Swami Yogananda said. He was an older person, came in the last years of Yogananda's life, but Yogananda looked at him and said, you have clear sailing. And that's the story Swami tells. All the other monks wondered, well, do we have clear sailing also? And Master said, all of you will have clear sailing if you keep in tune until the end. And many of the monks forgot that if was attached in their case. But that's not the story I want to tell. This is another story from the new path. Mr. Oliver Rogers, later Brother Devananda, an older man who entered Mount Washington as a monk a year or two after me, once told the master in my presence. This is Swami Kriyananda narrating. And this is what Oliver Rogers said to Yogananda. I heard you lecture 25 years ago at Symphony Hall in Boston. Through the years since then, I often wondered where you were. I suppose it was my karma that I had to seek God, first in other ways. But the compelling inspiration behind my search was always that evening with you in Symphony Hall. It was strange too, Mr. Rogers continued reflectively. That huge hall was completely packed, yet through your entire lecture, you kept your eyes fixed on me. I remember, replied the master with a quiet smile. Now, master's lectures used to have thousands of people, 3,000, 5,000, you see the newspaper edits. This was in 1925 or something like that, 25 years ago when Yogananda was 32 years old. And in that first meeting, Oliver Rogers didn't meet Yogananda, Yogananda didn't meet him. Now, Yogananda knew he was his own. Because as soon as they met, he told him, you have clear sailing. But for 25 years, his life had to play out the way it did. Lahiri Masha had to wait 33 years. Swami Kriyananda had to wait the years that were right for him. Each life is different. But even then, he knew he was his own. As Babaji said, my eye was always on you. And Yogananda demonstrated that, quite literally in that particular lecture. But things had to play out. He waited. And when the devotee came, he didn't even tell Oliver Rogers, do you remember? I remember you. Let it play out. Finally, one day, Oliver Rogers said, by the way, I had met you in that lecture, and you had kept looking at me alone. And Yogananda simply said, I remember. That's my job. And he's not going to give up on his job. So it's important to remember, as I said, we are children of the light. And the higher, greater onus, there is an onus on us to be like divine children, but the greater onus is always on the parent to make sure the child is taken care of, especially when the child doesn't yet understand, which is our situation right now. If you think about it, we are doing our best, but we are going to flub. We're still growing up. And so that light takes that responsibility very seriously. Let us never doubt. I'm going to tell you one more story, because I'm going to take it one notch lower, or make it more, there's no higher and lower, but make it more realistic to us. The master is not in his body. Swamiji is not in his body. We don't know yet whether we are those exceptional disciples who have clear sailing, but we should assume that is true, not in an egotistical sort of way, but we should affirm that rather. So what is the situation for all of us? And this is one of, again, my favorite stories. If you look for those stories, which are not the thrust of a chapter, you find many of these. So it's a fun exercise to do. This is from Swamiji's The New Path, when he went to India in 1950s as a representative of SRF. And when he went there, he was young. He was still in his 30s, early 30s. When he went there, he found that Master wasn't really well known. People didn't really know what a great mission Yogananda had brought. And so he wanted, and wherever he went, there were thirsty souls who had been waiting for him or somebody like him to come share about Kriya Yoga, come share about these teachings. And so when he reached Delhi, he decided he wanted to go big, not a small thing. And so he called the local group to discuss outreach, the best way to do outreach. Let me see, where is this? So before the first of my class series in New Delhi, I invited our local members to my hotel room to discuss plans. There weren't many members. They came cautiously, sat cautiously, and cautiously suggested that we rent a small classroom where I might address them and perhaps a few friends. I felt, however, that Master wanted me to make this message known to thousands. Let us rent a large tent, I said. A large what? They gulped apprehensively. For how many people? About 1800, I replied, this is Swami Kriyananda. Their look intimated that they thought I had taken complete leave of my senses. At last, however, they gave in. The tent was set up on a large empty lot in an outlying district of New Delhi. The day of my introductory lecture, I was meditating in a nearby dome. At 4 o'clock, the announced time of the talk, one of the members came over to fetch me. "It's a good crowd, Swamiji," he announced lugubriously. About 100 people. 100 people in a tent, enough for 1800, Swami thinking. Later, I was told that one member of particularly timorous disposition had already begun pacing up and down outside the tent, moaning, "Our reputation will be ruined." "Master," I played, laughing inwardly. I had the feeling that we would get at least 1800 people. That wasn't my desire. If no one had come, it would have been the same for me. But then recalling people's tendency to be late, which is not really the case in India, I'm just kidding. But then recalling people's tendency to, it's a tendency, not a habit, if I may, Jaya's lecture from SRW. So, but then recalling people's tendency to be late, I told this man, "Let us wait a while." 7 minutes later, he returned. "There are 200 people now, Swamiji. Hadn't we better start?" "Not yet," I replied. He left, wringing his hands. At 4:15, smiling with relief, he returned. "About 600 people are there now. Shall we begin?" 15 minutes was a long enough wait. I rose to my feet. During the brief time it took us to reach the tent, crowds more arrived. By the time I reached the dais, the tent was full to overflowing. 2,000 people heard me that day, most of them later enrolled for my classes. Now, all of this story was not relevant to what I was going to tell you about. It just builds the situation. This part is what's important to this Sunday's talk. At the end of my lecture, I announced, during this week of classes, it would be easier for those who might want private interviews with me if I were housed nearby. Would anyone here like to invite me to stay in his home? Afterwards, 50 or more people approached me to extend invitations. Dismayed, I realized I would have to refuse all of them but one. "Master," I prayed, "whose invitation should I accept?" Then all at once, seeing one man, I was attracted by the look in his eyes. And then Swami in brackets says, I can still see that look in my mind. "I'll stay with you," I said. Later, Sri Romesh Dutt, my host for that week, confided in me. I read Paramhansa Ji's autobiography of a yogi years ago and wanted very much to receive Kriya Yoga initiation, but I didn't know where to get it. At last, I read in the newspaper about your recent lectures in Patiala, another city which is 100 miles away. I decided to request time off from my office and go there to seek initiation from you. But my wife said to me, "Why go all that distance? If you have faith, Swamiji will come to New Delhi and give initiation here. Not only that, he will stay in our home." Truly, Swamiji, your visit to our humble dwelling is an extraordinary proof of God's grace. And even more than God's grace, it's the proof that God has his eye on us. Swami didn't know this person didn't know Swami, it all worked out, and this heart's desire of this devotee was fulfilled. As Master used to say so often, his favorite Gita quote, "He who watches me always, I watch him always. He never loses sight of me, nor do I lose sight of him." One of the great saints of this path, though not in our lineage, Yogananda said, was Teresa of Avila, and from Spain, saint of ecstasy, fully liberated. And when she signed her letters, she wouldn't sign Teresa of Avila, that's how she's known. She would sign Teresa of Jesus, in the sense that I belong to Jesus. I've consecrated my life to Jesus. That's how she referred to herself, Teresa of Jesus. And one day when she was in her cell meditating, this little boy came into her cell. And, bright-looking guy. And he looked at Teresa, she looked at him, and as inquisitive children do, he asked Teresa, "Who are you?" And she, as was her norm, custom, she said, "I'm Teresa of Jesus." And then she said, "Who are you?" And the child looked at her and said, "I'm Jesus of Teresa." And he disappeared. Many blessings.
When the dawn breaks and then the morning sends the sun high in the sky, who would hide from heaven's glory? Who would pass the challenge by? La 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 la.
There's a morning for every nation when the sun's high in the sky. There's a time for every people to affirm their destiny. La 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 la. Even so, all of us together can create a better land. Leave the past, a new tomorrow is for all who understand. There's a morning for every nation when the sun's high in the sky. There's a time for every people to affirm their destiny. La 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 la. Even so, all of us together can create a better land. Leave the past, a new tomorrow waits for all who understand. La 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 la. Leave the past, a new tomorrow waits for all who understand.
Life flows on like a river that homes to the sea. 1 hour bounding through mountain veins.